people who separated or divorced within 1 year of getting married, when did you know it was a mistake? Back in the early 1980s, I spent 6 years in the U.S. Navy. In 1986, I was recruited to go into the U.S. Army through a program for technical and intelligence-experienced military personnel to become warrant officers. All the Navy offered me was sea duty and more sea duty. It looked like a real good deal. I was engaged to a young lady 3 years my junior and had a bit more than $20,000 in savings. Everything looked promising with a new career and family life. The wedding went off without a hitch. I was looking at a vacation of about 3 months between exiting the Navy and entering training for the Army. It was when my recruiter contacted me over my security clearance that things went south. The credit report did not match my questionnaire. There were 3 credit cards with $14,000 balance I didn't mention. It was no big deal, they weren't delinquent, but I needed to amend my answers to account for them. Turns out my wife had opened up a charge card at our bank and got a couple of store cards around town. She had purchased some serious clothes and jewelry, but the real kicker was she had bought a horse. She had taken lessons as a child and decided this was going to be her new thing. There was the price of the animal, riding gear, saddle and tack, vet bills, stable fees, yada yada yada. I ended up dumping a big chunk of my savings into paying down these cards, then amending my questionnaire responses. She was from a very blue-collar family. They were very good people who worked hard for everything they had, but I don't think credit ratings and compounded interest rates were much discussed at the dinner table. So I explained about credit cards, the huge interest rate, how long it would take to pay one down, then about security clearances and having a huge debt with no job would affect it. I treated this all as a bump in a relationship, but things got dark really fast. My ship date was coming up and things had to be done before I started training. I was in good physical shape, but I was facing boot camp, AIT, airborne school, ranger school, warrant officer selection, and advanced training. Basically 18 months of utter insanity. I was prepared for what I faced, but there was a lot that could go wrong. If I got through it, I was a warrant officer, but if I dropped the ball along the way, I would not only be enlisted, but junior enlisted in the job that would decide for me. In theory, I could end up a line cook in some chow hall at Camp Nowhere. About a week later, the phone rings. It's about the horse. No one was taking care of the animal or cleaning the stable or even feeding the poor thing. The stable had covered down for the sake of the animal, but now we're charging $350 a week for the extra services my wife was supposed to be doing. She was leaving our apartment every day, and I assumed it was for riding and care of the animal, and for the first week, she was. The second week, she was lawyer shopping. She wanted out. She must have gotten wind of what happened at the stable and didn't come home that night. The next day, I got served with papers. Total marriage time, 47 days. So I ended up with an apartment with 4 months on the lease, no car and a horse. Found a new home for the horse. I had to defer my ship date, and it took 14 months to settle the divorce. My security clearance was approved 2 days after the papers were filed. I shipped the next day. In the end, I had 2 pairs of pants, 3 shirts, and a pair of shoes that had no business on anyone's feet. I was working 2 minimum wage jobs, 14 hours a day, paying down debt, lawyer fees, rent, and sometimes eating to get by. I ended up at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, mowing lawns for 2 months as I shipped without a training slot for boot camp. I wasn't happy, but I was relieved. In airborne school, I met an ROTC cadet who was going to airborne school over her summer break. She had a year to go before her commission, and we hit it off. We'd get together on holidays, between training, long weekends. When I finished training and got my warrant, still a cadet, she flew across the country to give me my first salute. I gave her a silver dollar as per tradition. 2 months later, she received her commission, to which I saluted her and returned the silver dollar. Married that Christmas. We had been together 31 years. No, she was not damaged. It's just the gulf between expectations and reality of what marriage involves was just too great for her at the time. Top that off with becoming a part of a military community and too much. She cashed out. I was still friendly with her parents who were mortified by the whole thing. They were very kind people and they stayed in touch for a while afterwards. Maybe hoping she'd come around, but I really didn't need the complication. I thought I was prepared for the training I was facing, but there were times I was just barely holding my own. I think it was a bit of petty revenge on my part when I sent them a photograph of my future wife. No commitment yet, it was always off still, and myself at the commissioning ceremony both in our dress blues. They sent a congratulatory card, but communication tapered off after that. My brother still lives in the area, and years later when I visited, I made a point of not going to that side of town. Academically, I'm curious as to how things planned out for her. Emotionally, I don't give a damn. My wife and I talked about it before we got married, but I can't recall a single conversation in 3 decades about her. Even this story, the most I have overtly considered it. Something like that is always in the back of your mind, I guess, if just to remind me to be thankful for my whole stupid life. 31 whole years. Congrats, man. Story 2. Not me, but my dad. I got back from his honeymoon and went back to work. He came home and something felt off when he walked in the door. She wasn't there when he got home from work, which was very odd for her since she got off work earlier than him and was always home when he got back. When she got back, he mentioned that it was out of the ordinary that she had been out and asked if she went somewhere. He wasn't accusatory, just curious because it never happened, but she dodged his question at first. Eventually, after he got suspicious of her dodging a simple question, she admitted that she quit her job, and when he asked why, she said she didn't need to work. So, she was planning on using him as her cash cow. He doesn't remember how the conversation went exactly since it was 30 years ago. He tried counseling and asked her to get her job back, but she always brushed him off and never took him seriously. He threw in the towel 7 months later and she started trying to fix things, but it had been 7 months of him trying to fix things and she had no interest. So he filed for divorce and went to achieve his lifelong dream. He dated and then married his middle school crush, my mom. 28 years strong. Story 3. Day after we got engaged, he changed. Then he uninvited my family to the wedding, said they would take my attention away from him. We lasted 3 months and then I ran and hid. To everyone who is asking, then why did you marry him then? I totally get that question. Here's the answer. I felt worthless. So when you grow up feeling worthless and a partner says, yeah, you're worthless and everyone can see that, but you know what? I will love you anyway. You jump on that crap like it's the last living plant in a nuclear wasteland. I didn't leave because I honestly believed it was either him or ending it all. I left because he was ending me anyway and I decided it would be less painful to just go away on my own. Then I lived. You hear this question a lot. If you ask someone why they stay, it's because you don't understand the trauma they're experiencing. It means you're lucky in that regard. Be careful with this shaming question. It's part of our trauma. Yep, those questions sometimes come across as insensitive or condescending. So, be careful. Story 4. I guess the first time I got physical. It took me a while to realize there had been subtle emotional cruelty for a while. As it always does, the cruelty escalated. It ended up being a really bad situation. My ex fits the textbook definition of a narcissist. I would watch YouTube videos of interviews with criminals and other people suspected to be narcissists, and almost be able to predict what they'd say based on what I thought my ex would say. And the cheating started. I know of 2 others for sure, but I suspect many more. It culminated with me uncovering a half plan to end me for my life insurance. Would they have gone through with it? Probably not, because the plan was really bad and they're not that stupid. But it was there. I had a complete breakdown. Quit my job, my insurance was through them, sent my kids to live with their dad temporarily, and ended up in the ER. When I called my spouse to come get me when they released me, they hung up on me. So I called my mom who lived 2 hours away and said, come get me. I'm done. That was almost a year ago. I'm still technically married because I've cut contact from me and my children's safety and don't have a current address for them. It's been a long uphill battle coming back from losing everything I owned. My job, my kids, my sanity. However, now I have a great job. Kids are back with me. We have a great home in a wonderful part of town and I'm enjoying getting back to being me. Story 5. Not me, but my sister. She didn't see anything wrong with him moving to another state and her staying at my parents' house and only seeing her husband when she flew to visit. He was in the army. Didn't see a problem when girls would post Instagram and Facebook photos of her husband hammered at a party when he told her he was at work. Didn't see a problem when he made huge purchases. A sports car, a 4-wheeler, that they couldn't afford without telling her. Didn't see a problem when he told her she should get implants during intimacy. Nope, never saw a problem. Didn't realize it was a mistake until he sent her divorce papers. They were married less than a year. I, for one, wasn't surprised. I tried to tell her a marriage that started with a proposal when both parties were in relationships with different people was doomed to fail, but she didn't listen. Also, yes, this is real. I'm not making it up. I wish it were. It's so interesting that most are saying how stupid my sister is. No one is talking about how much of a terrible person my ex-brother-in-law is. Yes, there's an accountability and she should have been more aware, but he's the one who did the horrible stuff. She was just in love. For everyone listening, always remember this simple fact. What someone will do for you, they will just as readily do to you. On a lighter note, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Now let's get back to the video. Story 6. Not me, but my dad. They got remarried after being divorced for about 5 years. I would have been all of it. But he met this woman in another state in a business trip and would travel up to see her every weekend after they hit it off. They knew each other for 6 months before getting engaged. The engagement was only for 3 months. My brother and I tried telling him about all the red flags, telling him to take his time. My dad is very well off financially and we kept trying to tell him things were moving too quickly, that she was only in it for the money. She moved her whole family from their hometown to the city my dad lived in, including their elderly grandmother who needed constant medical supervision. Before they were even married, the pantry was full of Whole Foods brand food instead of the local grocery store, as was tradition, all new furniture, and had the house repainted, all at his bride-to-be's request. The marriage lasted all of 2 weeks. Apparently, my dad's new bride had the gall to ask my dad to leave everything to her in the will and write me and my brother out. Only then did he realize she was in it for the money. The next day, he had the marriage annulled. Someday, I would like to know what it's like to fall so completely for someone that I don't recognize they are taking advantage of me. Must feel good for that instant before it all comes crashing down. Story 7. I was blindsided by it. We lived together for a year about an hour from my hometown. We relocated, upon her request and desire, to my hometown prior to our marriage so that when we had kids, it's best to be close to family. We had a house we loved, a dog we loved, jobs we both loved working in, or so I thought. Married in October. She goes to visit her sister over the next Labor Day weekend and I can't attend due to work. Comes back the Tuesday after Labor Day and tells me she's living a lie in someone else's dream and she needs a divorce. I had no idea. Divorce finalized in January. She married some dude that her sister was friends with and she met on that trip I wasn't able to attend. This September. Life is wild sometimes. So, did you get the dog back? Story 8. Honeymoon. We dated for 5 years, but on the honeymoon, we had a big argument over my liberal use of sunscreen. She refused to wear any because of chemicals, and I liberally use it due to my ginger skin. We seriously argued over this for a good hour, and she refused to even go into the pool with me because of sunscreen chemicals. After a scuba adventure with her, she could hardly walk because she got so burnt on her legs, whereas my skin didn't change. She then tried to convince me that it was all my fault because I didn't force her to wear sunscreen and that the honeymoon was ruined. It was then I realized I picked the wrong person. After a few more psycho arguments, mad at me because of something in her dreams, mad because I didn't remind her to bring an umbrella, I had to call it quits. I can't stay with someone who constantly blames me for their own problems. Luckily, no kids, and I got back everything I brought into the marriage. Story 9. Not me, but my friend's sister. Her sister got engaged 8 months into a relationship and got married 4 months later. Everything went well the first 5 months, but the husband started acting different. It wasn't chatty, his good morning or good night kisses became dull, etc. Her sister would ask if everything was okay and he would say, "I'm fine," every time. Her sister didn't want to push him, so she waited for him to talk about what's bothering him. One evening after eating dinner, the husband said he wanted to talk about the relationship. Before he could talk about it, he started crying. He cried for a few minutes and then told her he's gay. The sister filed for divorce, and after the divorce was settled, she wasn't really mad at him anymore, so she went to see him and forgave him. They became good friends, and the sister helped him become comfortable with his gender. She even helped him come out to his close friends and then to his family. 5 years later, the sister is now engaged to another man and expecting their first child. The ex-husband is now very happily married to a man for almost a year now. Damn, a happy ending. Story 10. Best girlfriend I had to date at the time. I was in my late 30s and had never been married. Dated about a year. Got married. Shortly after, she asked to have her name on all of my assets. A few rental houses, current house, and some financial instruments, the cars. Not a problem as we were married, I thought. But on a Wednesday, she insisted to be done by that Friday. I didn't have time to do that because of work and a deadline. I could start it the next week, I said. She pitched a fit and said if I loved her, I would do it by Friday. I found this strange and decided not to start it and see what happened. She moved out of our bedroom into a guest room. Got cold around the house, told me she would move back into our bedroom when I finished getting everything done. At this point, I thought BS and told her so. I went to my family lawyer to seek advice. She advised me not to put anything in her name at this point. Gave me the name of the marriage counselor. She didn't want to go to counseling. She continued to live in the guest room. I took my lawyer's advice and did nothing about the assets. The long and short of it was after 1 year of marriage, when on our anniversary she told me I didn't have her in my heart, I thought to myself, this is BS. About a week after that, I told her if this is the way it's going to be, I'm not going to be married like this. She then told me, okay, so what are you going to give me? Yes, she said that. I consulted my lawyer on what a judge would come up with regarding community property for the past year. Number came up to 20G. I took that number and added about 20 grand and proposed that to her so we can make it easy. I was going to spend more than that in lawyer's fees if it got ugly. It got ugly. A week later, I got served with papers. With all said in the complaint, when added up, she was going after $750,000 for 1 year of marriage, 1 year of divorce proceedings, and 2 years of property settlement proceedings on what should have been a 2-hour problem. Judgment came, 215 points in the judgment. I owed her what would have been the community property, about 20 grand, but awarded me attorney's fees. So in that, she owed me about 30 grand and left her to go buy her own car. Turns out this judge had worked her bum off through school to become a lawyer and the same to become a judge by 40 years old. I was told by another attorney that normally this judge never gives attorney's fees, but was so pissed off at the gold digging my wife attempted that she felt it was justified in this case. Even though I came out okay financially, it was an emotional train wreck to have this happen and go through all that. It's been 15 years since it happened. I was not dateable for about 2 years, but now, very happy with where I am and who I'm with. For the others with a story similar to mine and worse, I feel for you. I really do. I don't wish this type of thing on anybody. Divorce can be nasty and I don't wish it on anyone. But in the case of damaging relationships, it's a tough but needed remedy. When I look back at the relationship, do I ever think there was something I should have noticed before I married that should have been a red flag to me? Yes. In hindsight, there were things I should have seen but either shrugged it off or didn't notice. One red flag is that I know now and look for when I meet new people is how they treat others that can't do something for them. She treated me like a king. I was very nice to my family, but I did notice that at times she could be crap to others that can't do anything for her. I noticed this with staff at a store or wait staff. If they goofed up accidentally, she would let them have it. I thought that was strange, but didn't look too much under the covers on that. I really should have paid more attention to that because I got that treatment when I wouldn't do what she wanted after we were married. This was fate showing me something I should have paid attention to. Unfortunately, I let the other good I saw in her outweigh this and a few other flaws that I realized, upon reflection, I should have noticed. I think, had I dated her a little longer, maybe another year or so, some more stuff would have surfaced that I would have noticed that might have convinced me otherwise in marriage. But hindsight is 20/20. The one advice I tell myself and others is if something seems off, look into it a bit more. Might not be a big deal, in that case that's good, but it might be the tip of something a bit more malignant that you would be well served to avoid. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.